Hey y'all, Melissa here with you today, and I've got a super quick project that can be used in lots of ways and even sewn in lots of ways. So we're making these little scented sachets here, which can be used as car air fresheners. They can be put in drawers, they could be hung in rooms, and I've got several different ways I'm going to show you how to make them. And I've got a few different options for natural things that you can scent these with. So let's go ahead and visit the link below so that you can grab the project template for this, and then let's get to sewing. Let's talk supplies. First, you'll need your pattern templates, or you can just cut your fabric in a square or a rectangle to fold in half and make into a square. You'll need your fabric to cut your templates out of. You're going to need something to stuff your air freshener with. So I've got a few natural options here. You can do rice with essential oils put on it. You can do coffee beans. These are lavender buds, and this is natural vanilla bean. Then you can cut that up and put it in. Any of these are great options depending on what you want as your fragrance. Then you're going to need a ribbon or something for the hanger. So I've got a couple of different options here that I'll be using. If you're choosing to hand sew your air freshener, which is what I'm going to do with this felt one, you're going to want embroidery thread and an embroidery needle. And if you're machine sewing, which is what I'm going to do with these two, you're going to want hand sewing needle and thread to finish up after you've stuffed it. So let's clear all of this away, and then we're going to start with one of the machine sewn ones, the heart. Okay, so if I'm sewing out of fabric, this is just regular quilting cotton here, what I'm going to do is this one, I'm going to sew wrong sides together, so it'll be a little outline and it'll have a little flare around the edges. And then I'll show you how to stuff this one and finish it up. I'm going to use this ribbon on it, so I want to go ahead and put the ribbon in between where I'm going to want it hanging. And I think on this one I'd like the ribbon to just go right into the point of the heart. There we go. I'll add a pin so that it stays in place. And then I'm just going to stitch around, leaving a little gap so that I can put the lavender that I'm going to use in this one inside of it. Okay, once you have stitched around the edges of your heart and you've left that gap, it's time to fill it up with something that smells good. So in this case, I'm going to use some of this lavender. And once you've got all of the lavender inside, then you're going to take it back to the machine and you're going to stitch over your gap to close it all up. Okay, the next type of sachet that I'm going to make, I'm actually going to sew with the fabric right sides together, and I'm going to, for this one, use the twill tape, and I want it to go like this, and what that's going to do is that's going to make like a U-shaped handle. So right about there, and then fold this right sides together. And I'll cut off that excess, and I'm also going to stitch around two of the sides, leaving a gap on the third side so that I can put my fragrance filling inside. So let's do that one at the machine. So with this type of sewing where we're going to have the seams on the inside, because this is square, I want to clip the corners. If you had done this with a heart or with the tree, you would want to clip into the corners, and that allows you to turn it right side out and still keep the shape. So Then I'm going to find my gap. I'm going to turn this right side out. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill this with, this one I'm going to do coffee beans. Okay, once you get your coffee beans or your whatever filling all stuffed inside, you're going to fold those edges at the gap in towards each other, right along the same seam allowance where you sewed. And then, and I'm using a contrasting thread here so that you can see it, we are going to blind stitch that together. So to blind stitch, you take your needle along the fold, and then you're going to take it along the other fold, and that'll make a stitch going straight across between the two folds. So you can see as you do this, it kind of starts to make a ladder of stitches. And then when you pull, all those stitches disappear to inside the seam so you can't see them. And there you go. Then you just have to knot the thread and you're done with this one. Alright, the third type of air freshener I'm going to be making, I am going to hand stitch. So I've got an embroidery needle here threaded with pearl cotton embroidery thread. You could use regular embroidery thread too. And I'm going to stitch with what's called a blanket stitch. So I'm coming up through the fabric, and then I'm going to come up again from the bottom, a small distance away. And before I pull this all the way through, I'm going to loop my needle under the loop from the previous stitch. So what that's going to do is it's going to create this edging along the bottom here on the next stitch and every one after. So come up again, loop my needle through the loop, and you can see how it makes that little thing on the edge there. So let's just go ahead and stitch around. When you get close to the top is when you want to start worrying about putting the ribbon in to hang it, and you want to make sure that that ribbon gets stitched when you go around the top here. So I'm going to put that in between the layers, and then that'll get caught in the stitching as I continue. Now I can't do the edge stitch because I'll catch the ribbon in it too, so what I'm going to do is just stitch back to the back side and then pick up my edge stitching on the other side of the ribbon. So now I can resume the blanket stitching. Now ideally you would cut a piece of thread long enough to go around the whole thing, but if that's not what happens, you're going to try to find a good stopping place, which is going to be in the corner of the pattern somewhere, so like one of those corners. And then I'm going to take an extra loop in the same place, and I'm going to wind my needle through that loop a couple times and pull to make a knot. That'll hold that securely so that you can rethread your needle, and then you'll start again in the same place and continue around. Make sure when you knot the end of your thread that you trim it off. And you'll start in that same place and continue the blanket stitch around. When you get to where you just have a little bit of an opening left, this is when you're going to want to put your filling inside. So this one I'm filling up with rice that I've mixed some essential oils into so that it will smell fresh. And the nice thing about using the rice and the wool is that since this is wool felt and I'm just putting in rice, that if this one stops smelling later, you can just go ahead and drop some essential oils right on the outside without having to worry about unstitching it or anything, and it'll refresh the scent. So when you finish filling it with rice, and it doesn't have to be stuffed like super full, you're going to want to finish up the stitching. And then you can take an extra stitch to knot your thread, Pass the needle through the loop a couple times and pull tightly. And then this one is done.